Hey, we got an exhaust system. Welcome to Hack-A-Week. Okay, so the goal here in this video is get the exhaust mounted on the bike and possibly fire it up. I'd really like to do that. And to do that, I need to get the electrical working. I can fake that with my small jumper battery. And I need mostly a throttle cable. I can just kind of jumper wire all the stuff for the ignition. That's not a big deal, but I do need a throttle cable to be able to control the carburetors. I don't want to just go pushing on them with my thumb. I'd like to be able to give them a little crank over, lift the throttle up with some control. So first thing I need to do is get the throttle control mounted up on the handlebars and get the cables routed where they need to be and get them connected up to the carburetor. Just to catch you up here, I've got the bolts all in for the engine mounts. There's a cross bolt that goes across here. It's got some nuts on either side. Those have been torqued up. I put a yellow dot on everything that I torqued up. And let's see, the foot pegs are in place. I've got to still tighten these up all the way and torque them. I've just got them in there and snug down for now, but I want to make sure that they're in the right location, and it looks like they are. There's a couple of bolts that go in here. They're 10 millimeter, and they have a nut on the other side. That's a 17 millimeter wrench size on that nut, and it just fits right in on the frame there. And let's go to the other side. There's a bracket that went on right here. A couple of 8 millimeter bolts that went through here, through the frame. And to the other side, there's a couple of nuts on that. Back here, we've got another bracket that goes to that cross bolt, and then two 8 millimeter bolts that thread right into that bracket. There's the other side, the other foot peg, that other through bolt that I need to torque down. And then of course we've got to get the oil tank back on. There's the place where the two lines go in. Oil tank mounts right in this area here. I've got some rubber grommets that need to go into the oil tank. Rubber grommets go in here, and let's see, they go in here, one down here. I've got all that stuff in here. I've got the clamps that go around these guys that go into the cylinder head. There's the gaskets. I got new bolts for these. Let's see, what's this stuff here? These are the bolts for those. And all of the oil tank rubber grommets and such. So now I've got to dig through a couple of boxes here. Somewhere up there on those shelves are some throttle cables. Let's find that stuff. Alright, let's see. In here should be, yeah, there's the plastic part that the throttle cables go into. That slides over the handlebar. And then there should be some powder coated. Yep, there's a bag of powder coated stuff. That's got the housing that goes around that. There's probably some screws that I gotta find for those too. Clutch cable. Let's see, it looks like let's just take all this stuff down onto the bench. Okay, let's take a look at what we got here. Oh, by the way, I picked up a fairly inexpensive set of JIS screwdrivers. That's Japanese industrial standard. They may look like Phillips, but they are slightly different than a Phillips. Anything you work on a motorcycle, you need a set of these. I finally got some. Much better than working with the standard Phillips screwdrivers. They just fit better. Well, let's see. We've got some goodies here that are going to go around this throttle handle here. And of course we got other stuff that goes with that. Okay, this is the one I'm looking for. This is for the throttle cable. This goes in like this, and then it rotates like so, and there's going to be a piece that goes on top of that. Okay, so that looks like that's it right there. Okay, there's that assembly. Alright, first thing we got to do is get these cables routed through these holes, and they only go one way. This one threads into that hole. We have to turn this onto the cable. So let's make sure we get that threaded right. Come on, jump in there. There we go. And I'm not sure how far I'm going to need to go, but I'm just gonna, it's probably good enough right there just to leave myself a little room to tighten the nut. Alright, let's leave that about like that. And the other cable has its own little nut built onto it. Put that one through the hole. Being stubborn. There we go. Push that up in there and put the nut in place. And we're going to tighten this all the way to the bottom, but not completely tight just yet. I'm going to take it where it bottoms out, like right there. I'll leave that a little bit loose so I can move it around. Okay, step one done. That's the only screw I have for now to hold this on. Good enough for now. I can pick up some more later. I need to spec out what size those are the way I always do by going on the website for some Honda parts and print out the parts breakdown, and then I can see just what size it's supposed to be. But in the meantime, we're just going to put this together like this. Get a screw in here. I'm just going to tighten this up as tight as it'll go. It's still going to rotate, but it's good enough, I think, for now. I'll see if I can find another screw to get in there, but at least we can get the cables hooked up now and check things out. Alright, throttle cable routing. We're going to bring these cables toward the front, around the front of the fork tube, through here, and we're going to go down here underneath the coils. Go right between those two plug wires there, and we're going to take it through this hole in the frame right here. And push them through, and there we go. And we're ready to mount them up on the cable housing holder. Here's the two cables now. I've got the throttle, let's see, I've got the throttle in the off position. As I turn the throttle back, you can see which cable is pulling. It's this one right here. And this works. It'll open the throttle by pulling on the upper one. So that's where this cable is going to go. So if this one goes on top, that means this one goes on the bottom. So we can get this one hooked up down below first. So the lug on the end of the cable, that goes into the hole down there. A little bit tricky to get lined up. And then you want to rotate it so that it goes into the slot right there. Now we can get the cable into the cable holder. It drops in there just like that. We're going to tighten that up in a minute. And then we have the upper cable. When I rotate the throttle, you can see how that one wants to pull. So we're going to put that in the same way. Put it over here in the little hole. Get it in that slot on the throttle linkage. Let's give it a test here. Wait a minute, why is it? There we go. So let's see, we're going to leave a little bit of slack in that cable. That's good right there. I'll bring that nut up against there. Let's give it a quick test. Yeah, that looks good. Well, that's a good starting point, leaving that little bit of slack. Now we'll tighten up these two nuts, the one down below and the two nuts here. Okay, that one's tight. Let's tighten this one up. That's good enough for now. I'll come back and tighten these better later after we get the carbs all set up and synced. I'm going to leave that play in there for now. I just installed the clutch cable. Got about that much play in it. Free play. I adjusted the adjuster here out just a little bit. Cable runs down here. Only temporary. There are clamps that hold this cable in place. And it comes down here to this adjuster. I've got that adjusted. The end of it goes into the lever right there. So the clutch is connected up now. I want that there so I can check the gears, make sure everything shifts okay when I fire this thing up. I'm going to run it through some gears, pull in the clutch when I do that. Spark plugs. Let's get a little bit of anti-seize lubricant on the threads of each one of these plugs. I always do this on any engine that I put together. It's that silver stuff, you know, you can buy it at auto parts stores. Now these are ready to put in the head. Now when I fire this up, it's going to be the first time for it, and the piston rings are going to be seating into the cylinders. And I personally like to put a little bit of Marvel mystery oil into each cylinder. Gives it a little bit of that machine oil lubricant to help it out when those piston rings are seating in. And I put a pretty generous amount in there. I'm going to put about 3 squirts. Now that I've got some oil in each one of the cylinders, before I put the plugs in, I'm going to take my Kickstarter and just slowly rotate the engine around, just to move some of that oil around in the cylinders. Okay. Now we can put the spark plugs in. These are 18 millimeter socket for these plugs. These are brand new plugs. You want to tighten them to where you just feel a little resistance, just where the washer crushes, and that's good enough. Here's a neat little trick for putting the plugs in on the center cylinders. They're kind of hard to reach. Just put it on a piece of flexible fuel line, push the spark plug into that, and you can reach down into that hole and then just use the hose to get the plug started for you. Now we can connect the plug wires. The coil on this side goes to cylinders 1 and 4. There's 1, and over here is 4. And then the other coil, of course, is 2 and 3. Time to mount up the oil tank. I've got the grommets in here. There are, let's see, there's grommets in each corner. Those grommets are the ones for the bolts that hold the tank to the frame, and there's a bevel on one side, and then the other side is flat. The flat side is what goes towards the frame. Then these grommets will hold the side cover, plastic side cover on. Let's get this up here. There's a shoulder bolt that holds all that together. It's got a washer on it that pushes through the grommet. So we can put those bolts in place first, and they'll stay right in the grommet. And we'll get our lines down here set up. Put that down through there. Okay, I've got the lines down where they need to go. Let's see if I can get this lined up and started. Get these all turned tight. We'll tighten them up in a minute with a ratchet. Get the oil lines tightened to the crankcase. The torque on these 6mm bolts is usually 9 foot-pounds, and I've got a pretty good feel for that with my little ratchet, so I'm not going to get out the torque wrench this time. There we go. There's a breather line here that goes to the crankcase, has to go to the oil tank as well. And then this breather on top will eventually go to the air box. I'll make sure that that's on there. Now we get to the exhaust. This flange goes on here, and then the exhaust pipe goes on there, and a clamp goes around it with a heat sink on it, the thing with the fins on it. This is a copper crush gasket. It's Looks like an O-ring almost, and it's designed to crush when you put it in there. So let's put that in first, and we're going to put this flange in there. And now we've got some big old screws that go in there. This is one of the reasons I bought the JIS screwdriver. Get these started. And the way these are designed is you just run these down, and the washer in there, that crush washer, will squish, and then these are designed to bottom out on the head. That way you know you've got the same amount of crush on each one. So we'll just tighten these equally. I'm going to get on these now with a Phillips bit in a socket. And get a nice feel for how tight they are, a little more than the screwdriver. That feels pretty good. You don't want to go too tight. And just for good measure, we'll give them one whack with the impact. Okay. Definitely don't want to strip those, that would suck. Time to get the pipes on. This one's number 1. They actually label them for you with a little sticker. Number 1. And we're going to put one of these on first. It's going to go just like this. And then we can go ahead and push it on there. Get the flange in there first. There we go. I'm just going to leave it like that for now and get the rest of the pipes put in place. So when these go on, you got to make sure that you put the proper heat sink and clamp on. There's a bolt facing out like this. There's the other set are the other way. So there's a bolt facing in the other direction. That way you can get on to tighten them. I had this wrong the first time. Oh, hello. Now I get to put the collector on. So let's find number 1 pipe. Number 1 pipe is right there. These are all labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's see, that's 1. And that's pipe number 1. This is going to get a little tricky until I get them lined up right. Let's do this. Let's just play around with these until they all start to line up in some semblance of... okay, that's 4. Okay, there's 1 and 3, and let's get 4 started. Get 1 in there. Come on. It's a little tricky because they have to be in just the right position. Okay, there's 1 and 2. There's 3. Let's get 4. And then it's just going to be a lot of wiggling until it goes all the way. And there's springs that hold these, the collector and pipes together. I just got to keep wiggling until I get them all the way on there. Alright, we got things together here. Now we can get the springs on that hold the collector and pipes together. And they even give you a little tool to pull the spring in place with. Let's see how that works. Not too bad, actually. We just do the same thing over here on the other side, and the collector's on. Alright, back to the front now. I'm going to make sure that the pipes are all the way on to that flange. Give them a little tap with a 2x4. Not going to hurt anything. And we'll get that up there nice and tight. and get those as straight as I can. That one's all the way up. And we'll do the other side. Now we can get the silencer mounted to the collector. On the back here is a bracket. This goes on there, and it goes like that with that part pointing down. There's a rubber bumper that'll go on there later for the center stand to hit against. And these bolts go in here and hold this bracket to the silencer. We'll just get those started finger tight for now. Okay, so we're going to push this on till it lines up back here, and it's going to mount right here. It'll mount right on the rear foot peg area. And I don't have any instructions with this particular one. They kind of give you a generic one. I'm betting there's some online. But for right now, what I'm going to do is just hang this here, tighten this up, and just run a bolt through here to hold it in place temporarily. Got a temporary bolt to put through here. This is all just for test purposes, so I can just fire it up, make sure everything's okay, and then I'll go back and do all of this correctly later. Okay, let's tighten that bracket. And then we'll tighten that bolt up. Okay, one more thing. Getting up the clamp, out the collector. We got an exhaust system. Hey Seamus, how about a quick walk around? See what we got here. Damn, looks nice. Good looking exhaust. Bolts on fairly easily. Sweet. Hey, we're just about ready. I've got the ignition wired up to the coils. Then right here I've got my 12-volt supply. That runs up to the oil pressure light. That wire runs down to the oil pressure switch. 12 volts is hooked up to it right now. And the light is on, the oil pressure light's on. I got this little bottle sitting here that I used before on the Sabre for my fuel supply. Probably just rig that up right here on a tripod or something to let it feed, kind of like an IV. And this is the starter wire, so when I bump it against the 12 volts it's going to crank over. I guess that's about it. I just got to get oil into the tank and engine now, and I've got some here. I'm going to put some Rotella T in there, some 1540. Rotella T has zinc in it, good for these old engines. So let's get the oil in there, and then wow, exciting moment. We're going to fire this baby up. All right, we're ready to fire this thing up. I put the tank on. I wasn't going to do that because it was kind of cruddy inside. There was a little bit of yucky gas in there, but I decided to go ahead and do it because it's a lot easier to deal with, probably a little bit safer than, you know, some other little bottle nearby that could fall over and catch on fire. Speaking of fire, because this is the first time firing this up, things should go okay, but just in case they don't, good idea to have a fire extinguisher nearby. So I've got things wired up, as I mentioned before. I got my little teeny battery pack there. It's been charging for a while, and it's probably up good enough now. It's going to be powering up the ignition, just that little battery. So don't want to run it too long, but it should be enough to fire it up and just make sure everything runs okay. Maybe run it through some gears real quick and then shut it down. I'm not going to run it too long, and then once I do all that I can readjust the timing chain later. But here we go. Okay, here we go. All this time and effort into this thing. Be really awesome if it fires right up. So let's turn this gas on to the on, and I've already done that and filled up the float bowls, so everything should be good there. I'm going to put the choke on. I'm going to connect my 12 volt supply here, so I can kill the power just by disconnecting this from this yellow wire. I've got an oil light, and that's our cranking. Choke's on. This is going to be a little tricky because I'm going to have to do this and hold the throttle at the same time. I hope it's pretty cold too, you know, so hope this battery's going to be enough to kick it over. Let's find out what happens. Here we go. How awesome is that? A little cold-blooded. Good enough for me. Needs a little tuning, but it's running, and all the gears work okay. Yahoo! Well, who'd have thought that on this cold-ass winter day would be the day that I fire this thing up and get it running for the first time. There's snow all over the place out here, and well, I'm glad it runs. It runs pretty fine, in fact. Just got to do a little tuning on it, but now that I know that, I can continue with the project, get the wiring harness on, get the alternator hooked up, because we were just running off from a little battery there, so not really sure how much power it had for the coils and all that stuff. But it was running on all 4 cylinders, and it sounded really good, and no weird noises, went through all the gears okay. I am very pleased, as I'm sure you are. Some people wanted me to run it without the muffler on, but I'm not going to do that. I don't like loud bikes. If you like loud bikes and that's your thing, that's cool, but not going to happen with this bike. I'm going to keep the baffle on there. So, wow. Came a long ways to get to this point, and I'm really glad everything went okay. It pays off to be meticulous about everything and make sure it's all right. So, there you go. All right, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the donations. A lot of them really helped out with making it get to this point, so thank you very much, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and until next time. Torque on these 6 millimeters.